What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are celebrating something very, very fun for us. About a month ago, we hit the milestone of 1 year as a podcast. So we will be celebrating that and looking back on our first year and just kind of see how our content has maybe evolved and changed and just kind of how we've grown in general since day one. And of course, celebrating all of you who watch and all of the wonderful people who have taken the time to come on our show as guests and collaborate with us. Before we get going, it's time for the obligatory, if you like our content, please hit those like and subscribe buttons down below and hit the little bell icon to get notified when we put up new content in this next year of our podcast. We've been so fortunate to get the subscribers that we've gotten over the last year. And every time one of you hits the subscribe and like button, it helps us to get our content closer to being shown by the algorithm. So we really, really appreciate all of you. If you'd like to keep up with what we're reading currently, a lot of which doesn't even make it onto the show, then definitely give us a follow over on Twitter at Files Fantasy. My dog Hank also makes an appearance on there every now and then too. Before we get going into the meat of the episode, let's catch up real quick on what we've been reading lately. Gabe, so you've been dealing with some how do I want to phrase this?
Well, just I had a wisdom tooth removed, and that went great. And then 2 days later, I woke up with some severe pain, and it was dry socket and an infection. So we had to go back to the hospital and get that all taken care of. So now I'm feeling better. It still hurts, but I'm back in action basically. So yeah, I've kind of been down and out for the last week. I missed our show the last whatever Thursday it was or something, but
yeah, I think that was the Holly Tinsley and RJ Bailey one.
Yep.
And it was so sweet how like concerned they were, and they were,
I know, yeah,
they were just giving you well wishes and everything. I really liked that.
Very, very appreciative of them. That was super nice.
So did you get to read anything in that time or whatever since whatever our last podcast was?
I did. So I picked up kind of a comfort book for myself, one that I haven't read yet. It's called Ink and Sigil. And it's a book written by Kevin Hearn that's based in the world of the Iron Druid Chronicles. It's not Iron Druid Chronicles, but it's based in the same thing. And it's about this kind of, it's like a group of humans, totally human, that have, I guess, kind of power. It's called sigils. And so they can write these symbols with different rare inks and stuff and show them to people. And like, there's a sigil for like destruction, and a sigil for like, wiping somebody's memories, a sigil for pretty much everything. And so it's kind of, they're called sigil agents. And so it's just a story about, kind of a big bad comes in and they got to figure it all out, and they're working with the gods and this and that. So it was really good. Like I said, comfort book. It was nice to just sit back and read. So, but that's really it, man. That's new.
Nice. Is it a standalone, or is it part of a series?
It's a two book series. Yeah.
Okay,
so I'm gonna eventually get the second one. But yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Nice. Yeah. I heard about that one a while back. I think that came out. I want to say it came out right around the time that you got into Iron Druid Chronicles. Interestingly enough, from what I understand, it's a fairly recent one, which
for sure. I'm going to check the details. I bet you I can tell you when it came out. Yeah. 2021. So it probably was nice. Pretty new, but sweet. Cool.
Have you gotten the chance to start Golden Sun yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Monday, please start it Monday. I'm so eager. Just don't even think about it. Start Golden Sun.
Yep.
I listened to a podcast a few days ago in between books. And they were doing kind of like a whole Red Rising, like retrospective, looking back at the first trilogy. And I was just like, God, Golden Sun is so good. Like I just
Yeah.
it literally, like, even though I just read them, like it literally got me hyped to like read them again, like as soon
Nice.
as possible.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, Monday, like you said,
For sure.
Monday.
Okay, so I read a book. I think I talked about this last weekend with Holly and RJ, but I don't think I got into it too much. Um, so I read this book called what is it? Shadow Prowler by Alexei Payhov, and it's originally a I want to say it was originally Russian, and so it had to be translated from Russian
Oh, yeah.
to English. And it's a story about a thief who is so good at what he does that he catches the king's attention. And the king comes to him and he's like, "Hey, you're the best thief that anyone knows of. And so I need to like bring you into my service to go get there's some sort of MacGuffin that the king needs that
Yeah.
got taken by the dark wizard or whatever."
Yeah.
And so he's like, "I need you to like go to this mountain and steal this thing back from the wizard. Like you're the only one who could do it." And he kind of sends him with like this group of all these like different people, and they're not really like the classic like archetypes. Like you do have your warriors and your mages and stuff, but then you have characters like a jester
Oh,
who is like really good at like subterfuge. He's really
yeah.
good with like throwing knives,
Cool.
and he just knows like a lot about like the land. And so you get these kind of odd characters that you wouldn't normally see in like these kind of like groups. And it's really interesting. I really, really, really liked the main character. He is probably one of the coolest thieves that I've read. He's got like all these different tools and magical accessories. He's got these things that are basically like magical grenades. They're like these glass vials
Oh, like
with
little
like,
ampules.
yeah, like
Yeah.
with this like alchemy stuff in it, but it like contains a spell. And so he can like throw it and the glass shatters, and then like vines will come up and like grab the
Oh,
enemy or
wow.
whatever.
That's
And
cool.
so there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. There's like this string. He has like this ball of string that he uses, and it responds to his thoughts. So it can become like super stiff. And so
Yeah.
if he like throws it onto something and then he's swinging down with a thought, he can make it super stiff to like slow his fall so that he doesn't like
Oh,
go
cool.
straight into the
Yeah.
wall or
Yeah.
whatever. And he is just such a cool character, and it's all in first person, like the Dresden Files or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're like in his head, and so he's very witty, and he talks like directly to the camera, so to speak. Like he's talking directly to the reader, and kind of telling his story. And it's honestly like really, really cool. I cannot wait to get the second one. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was just something that I think I saw in somebody's recommendation videos, and I was like, "Oh, that might be something I would be interested in." And it made its way onto my wish list on Audible, and then I just kind of picked it up in between books. And also, you would never know that it was a translation. Like the Witcher books were translated from what is it? I want to say German or something like that.
Yep.
And you can tell that there's like a translation there because not everything really fits.
Yeah.
But the way this was translated, like if I hadn't known that fact, I would have just thought it was some guy, in the UK or in America or something that wrote it.
That's cool.
So I thought that was pretty neat. And then also I started, because I didn't really have anything to read. And so I started a reread of The Gentleman Bastards, which includes like the lies of Locke Lamora.
Mm.
And oh my God, I love this series so much. Like I really did forget like how much I love this series. And so that's been a ton of fun to go back and check all those out. I love following the adventures of Locke and his best friend Jean, and they're just like how they get into all these situations, like all these big heists that they have to do, and just all the really creative ways that Locke like weasels his way out of these situations that any other person would be totally
screwed.
completely screwed in. And so I just love that series. I can't wait for the day where you where you get into the lies of Locke Lamora, because I really do think that once it got rolling for you, you would be like, oh my God, like I love these characters so much. I love this dynamic between these two best friends who will do anything for each other and just their adventures. I really think you would love it. So someday
I'll have to try it again. And for the like I didn't get very far into it.
Right.
It was, maybe just an hour, and so I definitely didn't give it as much of a try as I should have.
To be fair, a lot of people kind of give up at the same place that you did, because there's these flashbacks and it's going back and forth so much. It's really, especially on audiobook, it's really hard to like keep track of
that.
What's the flashback and what's the modern day. But going through it this time, I think that I've developed a system to show you when there's a flashback and when it's going back to modern day.
Oh, cool.
So maybe off camera sometime I'll walk you through that. Yeah, and I'll write down some notes for you so you can know when it's going back and forth. Because I really, really do think that if you got into this book, you would love it just as much as like Greenbone Saga. You would love it just as much as like Night Angel or any of these other books with these really, really specific characters that really just kind of steal our hearts, Sweet. So yeah. All right, guys. So we are here today to talk about our first year as a podcast. I am so excited for this because it's just been such a wonderful journey. We're still a very small podcast. We are by no means like, some of these, even some of the bigger like book channels on YouTube, like they have like 10,000, 50,000, however many subscribers. And we are very small compared to that. But I feel like we've got a lot accomplished in the past year. I really feel like we have grown so fast just in the way that we like do things now. And the people that we've had so many guests, which has been arguably one of the best things about doing this podcast. So like I said, our stats are very small compared to people who have been doing this a while. But we barely know what we're doing. I'm sure we still have a lot of ways to grow. But like I said, we've had a ton of fun. Just wanted to take an episode to look back on how we've grown and where we're going. Currently, we have around 210 subscribers at the time of recording, which is more people than I would have thought would ever want to listen to us talk about books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and then double that amount on Twitter. We have around 400 on Twitter. We've had over a dozen guests on the show, and this will be our 41st episode of the actual podcast. And then on top of that, we have over 35 other videos that are more like smaller, like spoiler-free reviews, or like our reacts video, like the Euphoria video we did, or like the Dexter videos I did and stuff. And so that's kind of like where we're sitting at this time in our little podcast life. And so I'm curious to hear from you, like, how do you feel about this journey over the past year? And like, how do you feel like, and I'll answer this question too, but like, how do you feel like you've grown since day one, as, comfortability on the show and stuff like that?
Yeah. So to start, the very first episode we did, it was a King Killer Chronicles episode.
Yeah.
And I refused to be shown in the video.
Yeah.
I had my thing, because I'm super and very anxious person, especially when it comes to social stuff.
Sure.
And so, it's been tough to come out of my shell, but it has happened, and I still get nervous, but I think most probably do.
Yeah.
But I'm learning to push it down and be able to talk without, stopping. Cause my thing is I'll lose my thought and it's like, oh shit, damn it. I'm like,
Yeah.
next person.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's been good. And I've grown a lot. We have, especially in the difference, if you put like side by side, like our newest video and the first one, I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't even watched the first one because I'm embarrassed.
Oh,
Like,
I'm excited to do that. Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's been good, man. Yeah, it's been really cool.
How do you feel about the podcast just as a whole over the past year? Just the things that we've gotten to do and just kind of this journey.
Amazing. And just like you said, I really never would have thought that we would get so connected to, the community, right? With, we had David Dalglish on. He's, a published author, like, these big writers and wonderful writers, Holly Tinsley, and narrators and all this stuff. And so like when you look at it like that, like, how privileged are we to be able to host these amazing people and do that? And I never thought that would have ever came to fruition. I thought we'd just you and I doing this thing, and no, we got people that are friends and care about us. And I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more.
Very, very well said, Gabe. I can echo all of that. I think that when we first started, I had no idea where this was going to go. When we first started, I didn't know if it was going to be like just audio that we would put on Spotify, or like if we would do YouTube videos. I had absolutely no intention of doing the like spoiler-free kind of videos that I've been doing on the side. And I certainly didn't expect, like, not in a million years would I have expected that anyone else would have wanted to come on the podcast and talk with us. So it's really been a wonderful journey. I think the ways that I've grown, first of all, the editing.
Dude, yes, big time, dude.
Oh my God.
I swear, just quickly, I just say this quickly. Every time Spencer will, like, I'll watch some of our own stuff, not a ton. Sure. But Spencer will, like, in the last like 4 months, maybe once a month, he'll send me a text and say, hey, jump on Zoom. I got to show you something. And it's like a skit, an editing skit that he does. And every time I see him, they're like ginormously better and better. So yeah, you've gotten so good.
Oh, thanks, man. When we first started the podcast, I think our first episode was all in one take, because I don't think I even knew. I didn't know how to edit at that point. And so I literally like kind of a peek behind the curtain a little bit for the listeners is, I'll hit record, and sometimes we'll go right into it and be like, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Files. But sometimes we just kind of sit there and chat for a minute, especially if we have a guest, just to kind of get, warmed up and going, and get into the groove of getting going. And then I kind of hop into the intro. And I think with maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes, actually, I would hit the record button and immediately have to be like, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the, and just like have to be on like immediately. And so learning how to edit and stuff like that took so much weight off my shoulders, to the point where, I do get nervous for episodes sometimes, especially if we have like a big guest on or something, or like, I'll be honest, our first Night Angel episode, I was so nervous because we had never really like talked with these people before. And I was like, I hope they'll like the book and all this stuff. And so like for stuff like that, I definitely do get nervous. But just in like a general sense, I feel like my comfortability level came way up when I realized, okay, if I screw up or if I say anything wrong, like I can literally delete that from the whole video. Like for sure. Like I don't have to leave that in. And even in the intro today, there was a part where I screwed up, so that's getting edited out. So, it's just stuff like that raises the comfortability to know that you do have the freedom to like screw up and to, say say what you want in whatever way you want. And then if you don't like the way that it sounds, or if you don't like how it came across or whatever, then, you can just delete it.
Yep.
And so I think that was a huge point that kind of moved me forward in comfortability. But then, over the course of the past, especially once I got into the videos where it's just me in front of a camera doing the spoiler free reviews, that's where I really learned how to do a lot of cool edits with like, book covers spinning into the frame and then spinning back out and stuff like that. And then, figured out how to put stuff behind me, like get my green screen to where like I can put images kind of moving past me and stuff in the background, do a lot of cool stuff like that. So, just playing around with that editor. And I moved from dude, when we first started this thing, I had like a free video editor that was just the worst thing in the world. Oh my God. Parts of the, like, whenever I would cut sections of video together, there'd be like this big black bar that would come across the top of the screen. And I was just like, oh, and there was no way to get rid of it.
I remember that too. Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, like, what am I doing wrong? Turns out it was just that I had a super shitty video editor that was free. And I have noticed such a massive improvement once I moved up to Adobe Premiere. And that whole, like, I will gladly pay $20 a month for the rest of my life
for sure
for that software, because it does us so many favors. But yeah, that's probably around the time that I started to grow as a podcaster. And also what I wanted to mention was, I feel like once we got our show notes really dialed in, and really understood like what the flow of our podcast is, that kind of gave us an idea of, okay, we know that we're doing the intro. And then from there, we know that we're going to talk about what we've been reading. And then from there, we might do some, depending on what the video is, we might do some spoiler free discussion. And then we're going to go into, we just go down the sections of like the magic world building, the storytelling, all that stuff. And so we have, we can kind of design our discussion as we go along in a way where, like, if we're in the character section, like, we know that we don't need to talk about any of the magic because that section is coming up. And so I feel like that helped us a lot as we went along to kind of dial in the flow, like you said, the flow of our conversation. And I'd actually like to maybe just peel back the curtain for a minute, because I don't think we've ever shown these on screen, our show notes. And so I'd love to just show.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd love to just show the listeners kind of like what they look like and what we see from our side real quick. So this is our outline. This is just like bare bones. So like up here we have our title, name of book, series, and author. And then just like I have like the super basic intro ready to go, so I can just type from there and figure it out. Right here is usually where, we put what we've been reading. And then this is kind of where we go into spoilers on our normal podcast episode, where we do a deep dive into a book. As you guys probably know, we start with our like general thoughts and first impressions of whatever the book is. We talk about the author a little bit if we have anything to say about them, and the narrator. And then this is one that we haven't done a whole lot lately, is talking about the storytelling. I feel like we really only bring that in for something like King Killer, where how he tells the story is like just as important as the story itself. And then of course we go into the world building, just talking about the world that the characters inhabit in general, then the magic system and talking about how all that works. And then we're going into like whoever the main characters are, our favorite characters, whether they're side characters or whatever, favorite quotes, favorite moments, or most emotional moments. Usually for me, I'm usually the one crying. And then our last kind of thing is kind of just like final thoughts on the book, in general, like, if we're talking about like the first book in a series, we'll do like future book questions or theories, what we think is coming next. And then, that's where the outro goes. And that's pretty much it. And then if you guys want to see like what a full, like filled out one looks like, this is the one we did last week with Holly Tinsley. And actually this one is a little bit different. So this is an author interview. So I still have the intro, still have all that. But then I just have like general, like spoiler-free questions here that are all just kind of bullet points. And then we go into like the full spoiler discussion down there. I don't want to show too much of that, I guess.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's pretty much how it works. Let's get back over to, so yeah, that's our show notes, and that's pretty much how the bacon gets made.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
That's how the cookie crumbles. So let's talk about how it all started. Would you like to talk about, starting from us, like working together and Dresden Files? Would you like to talk about how it kind of evolved from there?
Yep. So Spencer, I worked for your company, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was probably like 3 years ago.
Okay. So 3 years ago, Spencer, and I had never done construction or anything like that, invited me to work for his company. It was an awesome job. While we were there, it would be like, we're out working. He has a speaker, and first time that I ever read like anything really big fantasy, he's like, I have this book called the Dresden Files, or the series.
Yeah.
Would you like to listen to it? And I was like, of course, let's try it out. And it was Skin Game was the first one that we listened to.
Yeah.
And I still remember that day, like, we finished up at the back of this lady's deck. We got in the truck and we were like listening as you were driving.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, this is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Like, this is some wild stuff. Like, I was just instantly like intrigued, dove right into it. And so then of course, like I picked them up, started reading them. And of course with that came me wanting to share. Right. And Spencer, of course, knows everything about it. So we would talk every single day, all the time. We'd call each other. Like, we'd have like 2-hour long phone conversations just talking about what's happening in this book.
Yeah.
And then, a year later, however long, Spencer was like, man, we should like talk, do what we're doing, but like post it online. Like, let's talk about it and share with other people. Yeah. I was like, that sounds fun. I'm nervous, but that sounds fun. And so, yeah, we started, man, and we're just went off to the races. Like, I read so many more books than I have ever read in my entire life in this last year than I had in the last 15 years. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, really cool getting to branch out and just grow my reading brain, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because that's been the funniest thing about this podcast, I think, is, I had always kind of read fantasy books. I think I started Dresden Files when I was maybe 20 or 19, 20, 21, somewhere around there. And I'm 30 now. And so, I had read those like religiously for years. I've probably reread them a dozen times. Yeah. And then I got into Night Angel, and then I got into like, my uncle was really into fantasy. And so he showed me some older fantasy, like the Time Master trilogy. Yep. And so I'd always kind of been into these, but I didn't read very wide. Like, I wasn't reading like a book every single week like I am now. And so I kind of just had like my little like handful of series that I really liked, and I would just read them over and over and over. Yep. And so then when we started this podcast, or actually, I think it really started happening when you and I started working together and listening to these books, because I was motivated to find more books
so I could read more books
to give you more recommendations.
And you guys should have like seen this. Like, Spencer was like my librarian for like the better part of this year. Yeah. Like any book that I have read has been a recommendation. Like, honestly, dude, like the Ink and Sigil is like probably the only book that I've read by myself without like
Well, you got me into Iron Druid, and you found the Land series.
The Land, yep, that's true.
And then you got me into Watchers by Dean Koontz.
Yep.
So there's definitely been a couple of them, but that was definitely my motivation when we were working together, because I was just like listening to these books, and I knew that you were getting to the end of one of the books that I had already recommended. And I'm like, oh, he's going to ask me like what to read next, and I don't know. And so
yeah, you're like, I got to figure it out.
Yeah. And so that's when I started getting really into like watching YouTubers, like watching other booktubers, listening to the Legendarium and the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. They were huge influences on what we do now. I think like our structure isn't the same as them, but I definitely got the idea for a fantasy podcast based on the Friends Talking Fantasy and the Legendarium. And then I started getting really into Mike's book reviews and seeing how, because he does like the spoiler-free reviews that I kind of do. And so as I watched more of him, I'm like, oh, maybe I can add that into the mix. But I literally the sole reason for seeking out any of those podcasts was just so I could give Gabe more recommendations, because we're working like 8 to 9 hours a day on these job sites, and we just have our headphones in. So we have all day to listen to audiobooks and podcasts. And it is the best way to pass a day in that kind of work, because otherwise the day goes by pretty slowly if you're not listening to something. And so that was what really got me into like branching out and finding more books. And then over the course of this past year as a podcast, getting into the Twitter community and getting all the recommendations from there, dude, I would have never imagined that I would have read this many books in a year. Like I think my Audible library now is over like 160 or something books. And so it's just wild how we got to that. But also, so going back to kind of how it all started. So all of that happened. And then like Gabe said, our first episode was like, he didn't want to be on camera. I was totally fine with that. And we just kind of filmed this first episode, and it had like almost no structure. I think our notes were just like a bunch of bullet points of things we liked, or things that we kind of wanted to talk about. And we also, for whatever reason, thought it was a great idea to talk about like multiple books at a time. So like we talked about the entire King Killer Chronicles series. We talked about the entire Mistborn series. We talked about like, we clustered all these books into one podcast, and they were like 3-hour episodes, 4-hour episodes.
Oh, man.
And I was just starting to think like, I wonder if we should do like one book at a time, but I was actually worried that you wouldn't want to do that for some reason. And so then you texted me like randomly, and you were like, hey dude, can we start doing like one book per episode? And I was like, yes,
You're like, absolutely.
I'm like, yes, can we please do one book per episode? That would be awesome.
That's funny. See, I didn't know that.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was nervous bringing that up because I didn't know if you would want to, because we were reading books really quickly.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if you would want to read one book and then maybe finish it on a Thursday and then have to wait until Sunday to talk about it before starting the next book. And so I was like kind of worried about him. Like, no, he's not going to want to do that. He's going to want to immediately go on to the second book. And so that was a huge relief for me. It's probably a huge relief for our listeners.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, and then it just kind of grew from there. We started having guests on when Chris came on. Chris was really our first guest, I guess, because he was a friend that I had known since I was in like second grade, and I was talking to him recently, or not recently, but at the beginning of when we started the podcast. and I was like, hey, we're reading this Mistborn series. Have you heard of it? He's like, oh yeah, I love the Mistborn series. And I'm like, oh really? Have you read the whole thing? He's like, yeah, dude, I love that trilogy. And so I'm like, oh, well, I probably haven't told you about this, but Gabe and I started a podcast. Would you like to come on and talk with us?
Yep.
He's like, sure, I guess. Yeah, let's do it. And so he was like our first guest.
Yeah.
I think that was like our third or fourth episode. And I think by then we had a little bit more of a structure.
Yeah.
That might have even been the episode where I started writing the notes the way we do. And
yep.
They've changed since then, but I think they were a little more structured.
Yeah.
And so then from there, it made me think, Chris coming on the show really made me think, could we get other people on the show? Like, could we, like, are there other people who would like to come on the show?
Yeah.
And so then Jarryd Smith came on, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And, we'll look at our episodes and see how we've grown, but that's really the origin story. I want to talk real quick about the Twitter community, because this is something that I was not expecting. This is not, I figured that we would upload YouTube videos and people would comment in the comment section, and that would be about the extent of our interaction with our fans. And so I actually reached out to Friends Talking Fantasy when, like, right before we started the podcast, and I was like, I didn't even expect them to respond, but they were so nice, and now they're like, friends of ours on Twitter, and we talk somewhat regularly. And I was just asking them, like, hey, we're brand new to this, we're really inspired by your podcast. How do you market yourself? Like, how do you get your episodes out there and show other people? And I don't know if it was Dylan or Charles. I think it might have been Dylan that responded and said, basically just have fun. Like, as long as you guys are having fun, that's like the number one priority. Because if you guys are enjoying what you're doing, if you're enjoying your content, if you're enjoying the books that you're talking about, as long as that is your number one priority,
and you'll be good.
Then your viewers will see that. Like, your viewers want to see people having fun and enjoying the thing that they're doing. And so that was like a huge kind of revelation for me, even though it seems pretty like self-explanatory. I was like, okay, so we don't need to like cater to what, like, what's hyped up right now and stuff. And even though we do try to ride that wave sometimes, we did that with like the Greenbone saga. We tried to get on as Jade Legacy was coming out. We'll do stuff like that because I think that that's just good marketing, right? But it's also something we enjoy. But the second thing he told me was to be a part of the Twitter community. And that's the first time that I had realized, oh, maybe we should make a Twitter account. And so I made this Twitter account. We had like no followers for at least like a couple months or so. Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi was one of our first followers. Started to talk to him, and he gave me and Fantasy Book Nerd on Twitter. He was also a huge help when we got on there, because they were both giving us recommendations of who to follow, because I know you've never made a Twitter account, Gabe, but basically you get on there and there's just nothing. Like, you have like a blank slate. Like, you have to look up other accounts to follow, and that kind of creates this network of things that show up on your timeline. Otherwise it's just a complete barren wasteland. And so I was just like, there's nobody here. What do I do? And so I reached out to them. They were like, oh, follow all these guys. They gave me like 20 names to follow. So I just followed every single one of them. And little by little, all these pieces kind of started coming together. And now there is like a family of people on Twitter for us. Like, there's people who like talk to us regularly. And so I just, I want to give the Twitter community a huge shout out. They are so amazing. The Twitter in general has given us is the only reason why we've had the opportunity to interview other content creators and authors and stuff. Like Twitter is just the best place to reach out to anyone of that type, like any authors or any other creators and stuff. Like that is just the best way to communicate with them. And so that's been a massive help in our growth, you know. Okay, so I actually have a couple questions for you. I'll answer them briefly as well. So we'll be looking into our past episodes and kind of general progression in just a moment. But Gabe, what have been your favorite moments as a podcast? Like things that we've gotten to do, guests that we've had on, or just books that we've gotten to read that we wouldn't have normally found if we were just, you know, still working together in construction, not doing the podcast. What have been some of your most memorable moments of the past year?
So the first that pops to mind is probably, you know, our first author interview, which was Jarryd, correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that was kind of a moment where like I realized like that this, you know, is moving, it's going forward, right? Like we're growing and stuff. So that was super like kind of eye-opening, you know, because again, like we didn't really think that it was going to turn into what it is now. And again, we're not huge, but you know, we're out here having a good time and stuff. And and then like when we had Holly's first book, I'm totally blanking.
Wow, We Men of Ash and Shadow.
Exactly. That's why I blank, because it's so big title. But anyways, so that was a book that I probably would have never read. And then getting to have both the narrator and her on was like,
oh my God, yeah,
super big. And those are probably my favorite. Like I love like going like Dresden Files, because that's just a staple, right? I love it when we deep dive into there, even if it's just us. But you know, there's moments where we have these people that, you know, we've, you know, basically been accepted into this kind of family of people, which is really cool. And so I mean, since since, you know, the Holly and RJ thing, like I remember there was a week, you know, where the entire month was just author interviews. You know, we
that was
4 or 5 podcasts.
Like the last month or two. It was just like boom, boom, boom,
which is crazy. And you know, we've had these, you know, huge, where we have 6 or 7 authors on, and you know, all, you know, incredible books and famous authors. And so it's just eye-opening.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild. So I'll start with one of my favorite things that we've gotten to do. And I think that is meeting Fonda Lee.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Dude, that was the most surreal moment, because, you know, not that the other authors that we've had on aren't, but Fonda Lee is like a massive name, right? Like she's like a huge name in the fantasy community. And, you know, getting to talk with her a little bit over Twitter. And then I found out that she was coming to town. She was coming to Seattle to sign some books. You know, we only had like 1 or 2 exchanges on Twitter before that. And then we show up, we're in line to get our book signed by Fonda Lee. And as we walk up, she says, "Oh, it's Spencer and Gabe from the Fantasy Files." And
and we had like masks on and everything. And like, you know, big coats. Like we're not easily, you know,
recognizable.
Super noticeable. And she immediately knew. That was pretty cool.
That was absolutely wild.
Yeah,
and
she's such a sweetheart too, man. That was, oh my God, awesome experience.
And we had like this whole line of people behind us, and she took like 15 minutes just to talk to us about the podcast and about the books. And that was so absolutely surreal. Like that's a moment that I will forever remember. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And so that was really, really fantastic. Something that hasn't happened yet, but I'm looking forward to is going to Legendarium Con. And getting to meet those guys. I'll talk about that more in a minute on this next question, but that'll be fun. Books that we have read that we wouldn't have normally read. Ooh. I didn't even prepare for my own question. Let me think.
Well, it's kind of a tough, it's a tougher question because like I feel like a lot of these books, well, and for me, I kind of have a scapegoat because like I mean I wouldn't have read
Right.
all these books except for it was for you really, but
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of the books that we've covered are books that we probably wouldn't have found without the Twitter community, especially the self-published stuff.
yeah,
Because before starting the podcast, the only self-published book I knew of, and I don't think I even knew that it was self-published at the time, was King's Dark Tidings. And so, that's really the extent of what I knew about self-publishing. But I think The Hand of the Sun King is definitely a
oh
gem
yeah,
that I had heard about
yep,
on Twitter. um, I'm not sure if I would have started reading Jade City, although it is pretty prevalent in the booktube community. So I probably would have found it at some point if
yeah,
it weren't for the podcast. Oh, books like The Lights of Prague or Empire of the Vampire or Bloodlines. I did a whole video about vampire books. Those three are definitely like Twitter recommendations that have really been awesome that I wouldn't have found otherwise. Um, Really just all the like Voice of War, like I would have
yeah,
never ever
yep,
like I never see that on booktube or anything, so I would have never known about that if it weren't for connecting with people on the podcast. Yeah, I'd say those, and maybe Foundry Side is another one that I think was a Twitter recommendation. And then yeah, guests that we've had on, I'll kind of go through some of the guests that we've had on in a minute, but I think for me, like, so first of all, Jim from Fantasy for the Ages, like he has like genuinely become like a friend of ours. Like he's someone that I know, Gabe, you're not on Twitter a whole lot, but he's definitely someone that I communicate with
yep,
regularly on Twitter that has like genuinely become like a friend of ours. So
cool,
that's really cool. Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi,
yep,
like, he's become an awesome friend of ours. And then Holly and RJ, like that has just been such an interesting,
yeah,
like, I just randomly found that book in some like, post, like I hadn't been following her or anything, but somehow it made it into my timeline and I just like decided to pick up this book and I made a review about it. And then she was like, oh my God, I love this review. And then from there, her and RJ started just
yep,
like talking to us, and we set up interviews, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
yeah,
And then we got to be what's the word, not beta readers, but like we got
yep,
advanced review copies for the next book.
yep,
And all of us have just become like such like really great friends, to the point where, like I said, like they were like genuinely concerned about Gabe on the episode from last week, which I found incredibly endearing. And I'm
yeah,
like, man, like they really are like just real friends of ours, which
for sure,
is another thing that I didn't expect to find,
yeah,
starting when we started this podcast. Like I didn't expect to find like this whole community that is so accepting and loving and people that care. And
yeah.
it's just phenomenal. Um, so then Gabe, so where do we want to go in the future? What kind of content would we like to do, whether it's, even outside of like reading books? Like, we have this react series
Yep.
now. We
Yep.
can talk about video games and stuff. Like, what where do you see this going in the next year, in the next, like, where do you want us to be eventually?
Well, I think this year's gonna be, I mean, I kind of know what to expect, but I don't, just based on the stuff that has happened in the last year and the kind of, you know, mind exploding things that have happened.
Yeah.
I know that more of that is going to happen. I know that
Right.
more is going to happen. And I think that I really like the Reacts videos. And I think doing something with video games would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially if you and I have both invested a lot of time into one and we really enjoy it. And then
Yeah.
Also, soon I'm going to start a Discord server as well. And
Yes.
yep. And so that'll be a nice way for me to kind of jump into more of the stuff. I don't really go on Twitter all that much. It's kind of your thing. And so, it'd be nice to have Discord where I can say
Chat
my
with
piece.
people.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. And so yeah.
for
And
sure.
then more authors and more books, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Where do we want to go in the future? I would love for by the end of this next year, or really, I'm honestly, our subscribers have kind of snowballed the past like 3 months, I think.
Yeah.
And so for a while we were stuck at like 75 subscribers. And then maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, it just kind of snowballed, and all of a sudden it was like past 200. And I'm seeing, new followers, new subscribers
Yep.
every week. And so I really hope that maybe if it keeps up the snowball effect, that maybe in 6 months we'll be at like 500. And then hopefully by the end of this next year, we can pass the 1,000, which
Yep.
is, kind of the monetization milestone.
Yep.
And we're not here to like make money. We're not hoping to like get big from,
No, yeah.
we're not expecting to get like 1 million subscribers or become like the next Daniel Green or become the next Legendary on podcast or anything. But it would be nice to get a little bit of revenue just to pay for the
Equipment, really.
just the
I could
equipment,
get a
like
green screen and all
yeah,
that stuff. So
exactly. And like, Adobe Premiere every month is $20. Zoom every month is $20. And so, just to get a little bit of revenue kickback for that, just to cover those basic costs would really be great. But at the end of the day, this is a hobby for us.
Yep.
And, it's just something that we want to do for fun. So even if we never reach that monetization milestone, I'll happily pay the $40 a month for Zoom and Adobe just to be able to do this and share it with the world, and to share this time with Gabe.
Yep.
Like that's the whole reason for starting this, is like I think we both just wanted an area, even if we didn't even know if we were going to post our first episode, but we wanted an area, some sort of space that is ours, to be able to
just be ourselves and talk about books. Yeah. With no restraints, we can do it our way. And
exactly. Awesome. Yeah. And just to have like a specific time and a place, because our conversations before were kind of this trickle feed throughout. Like when we'd work together, we'd talk a little at a time about them, and then then it kind of grew into the long phone conversations and stuff. And it's just nice to have a place and a time to sit down and talk about these books. So also where I hope to see us going in the future, with all these collaborators that we've had on in the past few months, it's made me realize that, first of all, being so busy the past couple months, it's made me realize that it's a little nicer to kind of slow down and make videos like this, where we're not like, we don't have some crazy deadline that we have to meet, or have some like, some sort of like, guess that like, oh, this person's scheduled for this day, so we got to make sure that we get there. And like, those days are very important and they're very fun to have those guests. But back to back has been, it's been
especially
stressful
for you, man. Because I feel bad.
Oh no, man. It's, I never take on more than I know I can handle. Like, even if it is kind of stressful, like it's never to the limit where I'm just like, oh, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
But I have been thinking, it'll be nice to slow down a little bit and kind of space those out a little bit more, after we've kind of had this just triumphant like couple months of back to back. But also I wonder, and I wish that Chris, we're kind of this person, but he reads at a much slower rate than we do. You know what I mean? So it's nice to have him as a kind of a third co-host.
Yep.
But I would also love it if we found someone else who could kind of rotate in every few episodes, not necessarily rotating one of us out,
Yeah.
but just kind of giving that third chair, because I definitely have noticed that on our podcast where there are 3 people talking, the conversation is just like
way smoother,
ever flowing. And it just kind of like, there's so many people to play off of, because when it's just Gabe and myself, it's like we play off each other really well, but we only have each other to play off of,
for
right?
Sure. Yep.
And so definitely having that third person is, I noticed that, you know, whenever we have a third person, that is when the dialogue is most equally split. That's when, you know, that's when I say the least and Gabe says the most, and then the third person comes in to fill the void.
Yep.
And it's just a really, really good mix.
Yeah. And I noticed too that I'm getting more comfortable with just us, but having that third person to kind of fill space in case, you know, I choke or whatever else is also,
or in case one of us needs to think or whatever, you know, that's a perfectly normal.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
For sure. Yeah.
So,
I'm not saying like, you know, it's bad, but it's just something that I noticed, you know, I'm more kind of get in the groove a little bit better because you have a little bit more time. You know, you can, just like you said, you know, you have an idea and you have an idea and you both speak and I can pull from both those.
Right.
And kind of, you know, get a little foundation for what I want to say and whatnot.
Yeah. And when there's a third personality there, that gives you almost more like content to draw from, because I feel like, you know,
different opinions, you know, like they have different, they look at through different glasses. Every person's got a different way of reading stuff and thinking about it. So it's
100%. And I think that's what Chris is so good with, is that he usually has very different opinions than we do, like,
which is freaking awesome. I remember there was one episode, I can't remember what book we were doing. Oh, I think it was Mistborn, I'm pretty sure. Okay. And Chris said this like very profound thing about love, and both you and me were like, I gotta take a minute, dude. I'll be right back, dude. That was so like perfect example of Chris's ideas. And I miss it. Where is he? He's got to come back. You know, so it's been a while.
He's reading. I talked to him the other day. He's either starting Lightbringer or or Red Rising or something. And so when he finishes that, we'll all get back together, because I reached out to him, not in like the podcast chat. I just reached out to him personally. I was like, dude, we need you back on the podcast. Like, are you coming back on? He's like, he's like, all right, I'll pick something up. And so he's starting some book now. And even just not, you know, not that, like just, you know, spending more time, like playing video games with him or, you know, something like that, just to kind of stay connected. But I'm excited when he comes back. That'll be fun for sure. And that podcast chat that we have too is awesome. Is so much fun. That has been such a joy to
it's not even really like a podcast chat. Like, we shouldn't call it that. It's like, I know, it's like the chat where the, just, you know, another co-host friends, is, but it's awesome, man. When you guys are going back and forth, like some of the shit that you say, of course, is just fucking hilarious. Like, right. And then Chris will come back and like challenge you. And it's just like, I'm at work and I'll hear like 8 or 9 dings. And I'm like, all right, you know,
I gotta look at this.
A couple stops and I'll take 10 minutes and I'll sit and I'll read it and think about it and either reply or not, depending on what it is. But that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoy our little family that we have. Bringing Chris on has been an absolute joy. Hope to have him on again. But I also, like I said, I also hope to you know, if we ever run into somebody through doing all these collaborations who is like, you know, I have Sundays free or whatever, and I would like to join us for podcasts, like, man, that would be a ton of fun, just to bring new people into the mix and kind of have it totally rotating. Because I think that's how Legendarium started. It started with just a couple people, and they just kind of gradually brought people in, and Legendarium has like a rotating like not
schedule kind
yeah,
of.
like Craig is always the host, but then he's got like this rotating group that kind of comes in and out. And so I'd love for like you and I to be the constant and then kind of have like this rotating
that would be cool
thing every now and then. That'd be fun. And so then, yeah, what I'm looking forward to in the future is this Legendarium vlog in a week. In a week on Saturday, we are going down to Portland to go to Legendarium Con. We're gonna try to film the whole thing as long as they let us film during it.
And if not, we'll film on the drive down and the drive back, and we'll, you know,
and there's like lots of other fun things. Like they're all going to a bookstore where we're meeting them. They're going to like an arcade to get lunch and stuff. And so we'll film all that stuff. But I don't see them having a problem with us filming the actual convention, but we'll see. We'll try to get whatever footage we can and kind of compile that into a big thing for you guys. And so that is like literally like a vacation for us. Like definitely. I am so excited for this thing. I think that if it all works out, I have a huge surprise planned for the morning when you come over here to pick me up. And so, you know, we'll see how that all works out. I think it's going to blow your mind.
Awesome.
All right. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking forward to. So we need to wrap this up, but we have some questions from the community. Jarryd Smith, the first author that we had on here, his handle on Twitter is J Smith Indie Author. He says, what do you think about all the books you guys have read this year, and what are your plans for the future? I guess that kind of answers the previous questions.
But
yeah, I guess you know, general opinion on the books that we've read this last year. You know, we are very fortunate to be in the community that we're in, and to get the recommendations from people that we've gotten, because, you know, a lot of them we never would have read otherwise. Right. And then we have a tweet from Krystle Matar, who is the author of Legacy of the Brightwash. And I guess I should also say Jay Smith is the author of Chaos Reigns, that series. Krystle, at Krystle Matar on Twitter. What are some things that happened since you started that you did not expect? Have there been some pleasant surprises maybe? And I would also add on to this, have there been some unpleasant surprises?
That's a good question. So this is kind of silly. This is just the first thing that's kind of a surprise to me, and maybe even Spencer will be surprised because I haven't really told him this.
Oh, cool.
It's not huge, but so, you know, we do mostly, at least for me, it's almost purely audiobooks. So on Audible or Authors Direct or whatever it may be, wherever we can find these books. And so the cool feature about Audible is you can increase your reading speed, right? So you got your regular 1 times and then 1.2. So the last 2 books that I've read have been on 2.0 speed, twice as fast. And dude, it's like I've got it down. Like I can do it.
Really?
It's yes. Like clearly. Like I read Ink and Sigil, you know, it's an 8-hour book. I read it in 4 hours and I retained all of it. It's like I don't know, but it's just kind of a cool little knack that I've developed. Anyways, it's a little silly, but
it certainly helps for podcasting, getting books done by deadline, right?
Quick, exactly. Yeah. If I have to cram, normally I probably wouldn't do 2, but I can if I have to, which is
right.
And yeah, pleasant surprise for me. Of course, I mean, there's a lot. This whole journey has been pleasant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like tough at times, but worth it. But probably meeting these authors would probably be the first one, and then the second one is my level of comfortability.
Yeah.
You know, on the podcast. Again, it's not perfect yet, but it's definitely gotten way better. Go ahead.
Real quick. I've noticed your confidence just in general, like even just like in life has grown from kind of this whole experience, I think. And you can probably speak to that more than I can, but I feel like I never knew you to be shy or anything, but like after we started the podcast, like I just noticed like this whole growth in you in general, and just like, and you know, I'm the one who edits the podcast, right? So I'm like, I'm watching every single episode back that we do, and just watching like from the beginning to now, like I think both of us have just grown in the way that we are so much quicker to answer questions. We're so much quicker at like thinking on our feet, like random questions that kind of come out of nowhere, and, you know, playing it by ear. I think that you especially have gotten really, really good at that. And, man, there's been some moments, I think I've texted you a few times where I've been editing something and I'm like, dude, you did so well on this episode. Cause like there's some episodes where you would just go on like a whole monologue like Chris did with the love thing. And I was like, wow, like that was really incredible. And so I was just
I appreciate that, dude. Yeah, no, it makes me, you know, it's a good confidence booster when you do message me, because it's hard for me to notice really, like if I, you know, if I'm not looking at the big picture and whatnot. And so that's always, you know, it's good for me to hear that and whatnot. And I definitely feel more comfortable. And it's, you know, I comfortable is probably the best word, but it's more enjoyable too, right? Because like when I'm nervous, I overthink, which I still do. But like when we started, it was like violently overthinking.
Right.
You know, I was like, what if you ask me this? If you ask me this, I have to say this. And if I say that, I can't say that. But this, you know, it was like just constant like battle in my head of all this crap. And then finally just realizing like, doesn't really matter. Just say what you're going to say and don't worry about it, because it'll either get edited or it just won't sound great. And both of those are totally fine. You know,
both of those are totally fine. Cause I say dumb shit on the podcast all the time. And like lose my train of thought. And I'm just like, well, I'll just have to find a way to fix it in editing. I don't know what to do.
I always just say, all right, that's all I got. Go ahead, you know? So yeah, that's good. And then for an unpleasant surprise, I don't really know. I can't, you go first. I want to see what you have to say about that. Cause I'm not really sure. Cause like, I don't do, you know, like a lot of the editing or any of the editing, I should say. That's all Spencer. He's incredible. But yeah, so there hasn't really been moments where I'm like, you know, like F this or whatever else. It's always been, you know, sometimes, and I guess this is not really an unpleasant surprise, but of course, like, you know, sometimes, oh, I'd rather go do this or whatever else. And that can be like, not really unpleasant's a bad word for it, but kind of like dragging along. But then once I'm here, it's like, all right, this is great. This is like, you know, once I get past the like, oh, I could be out mowing the lawn or I could do this. It's like, no, man, this is way more fun than doing shit like that. I love mowing the lawn. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
That's funny. You're gonna be a great dad someday out there,
dude, I
mowing the lawn.
I don't know why. Well, because you know, we just got this huge property, right? And there's a lot of grass.
You're so excited.
Yeah, dude, it's fun. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah.
I love it. So for me, I would say, and I'll answer the other ones too, but just to kind of keep with the question, I think that for me, unpleasant surprises come down to you know, I feel like, you know, we are simply people. Like we are not going to be perfect in front of the camera every time. You know, we're going to have conversations that don't really go anywhere, that, you know, that weren't as exciting as we thought they'd be, stuff like that. And so I would say, but we also, of course, have our extreme highs, right? We have episodes that we get off of and I'm just like, dude, I text Gabe, I text you, and I'm just like, dude, that was the best episode we've ever done. Like that was
you kind of it is. That's a good way to describe it. Kind of a high that you can ride on for a little while.
Exactly.
Just kind of, you know, feeling of like elation and just pleasantness. It is cool. And I noticed that and I love those episodes.
It sticks with you for a while. But the reverse is also true. So I would say that the unpleasant surprises, I don't have any like videos that come to mind or episodes that come to mind specifically, but there's definitely been episodes that we've gotten off of I've just been like, oh man, like that wasn't the best conversation,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
like
definitely.
we were kind of like
Definitely.
struggling through that
Yeah.
one, or whatever. And that kind of sticks with you for a few days too. And
Yeah.
especially usually when I go back and edit something, I'm like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
But like before I start the editing, I'm like, I don't even really want to edit this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I just have this thing in my mind of like it not going as well as I thought.
Yeah.
But then every time I get into editing, I'm like, oh, okay, it's really not that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there's been times where either we've done like an interview or a collaboration, and I kind of come away from it feeling like, oh man, like maybe I wasn't like as good of an interviewer as I could have been.
Yeah.
And I feel like kind of down about that. And so those are definitely the downsides. I would say, I don't go into a whole lot of the like analytics on YouTube. I kind of just post stuff, and if they happen to do well, then I notice it, and that makes me happy. If we get a lot of comments, like I notice that, I get the notifications, and those are great. But so I really don't I don't get into the whole like, okay, well, this only had like 30 minutes of watch time or whatever. I really don't go that deep into it.
Yeah.
But I do watch the views. And there's been a couple videos that I've put out that I put a ton of work into, like literally like 8 to 12 hours of editing, like over a weekend or something. And then it gets like 7 views.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, fuck, dude. Like I worked so hard on that, and it's got like 7 to 10 views. And of course that like grows over time. Like some of the videos that we had like 7 views on at the beginning now have like, 75 or whatever, so it does grow. But it is really tough to see those videos kind of go down, or not go down, but like just not go up in views very quickly. And I'm just like, oh, I wanted this to be a success so badly. And then we had some asshole who was just I don't know who it was, maybe somebody I pissed off on Twitter probably, but some asshole was just going through and disliking every single one of our videos.
Oh God.
And I was just like, what the fuck, dude? And so a pleasant surprise though, I went on to Twitter and I was like, hey, everybody, I'm like, I don't know if this matters to anybody, but some dick out there is just disliking every single one of our videos. Like, if you guys could give us a like that would bring our mood up a lot. And we had like a whole crowd of people that like went through and like liked every single video.
So cool.
And so that just speaks to like the Twitter community and how great, our viewers and listeners are. But let's see, I want to talk about something pleasant, a pleasant surprise. So obviously all the guests, like Gabe said, all the books that we found, my dog getting into the sequel to Wee Men of Ash and Shadow, that is nuts. That is cool. A super pleasant surprise.
Freaking the best for doing
that. My God, that is cool. So wild. And then pleasant surprise, holy crap, so I tweeted at Kelcade months and months and months ago, and she is the author of like one of our top 3 favorite fantasy series of all time. And I tweeted at her, I'm like, hey, like I sent her our King's Dark Tiding videos, and I was like, please, like, we would love to have you on the podcast. We are like super fans of this series. And she did not respond for like 6 months. And I was honestly kind of devastated. I was like, oh,
I felt bad, man. When you showed me the messages, and I was like, he like poured his heart out into this, DM or whatever. And, but then,
so like, I'm feeling really bad about it, because I'm like, we're super fans. Like I really expected her to hit me back. And then one day out of the blue, maybe like 2 months ago or something, she sends us a DM back and she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't check Twitter. Like I just don't like check these DMs or anything.
Yep.
She's like, I would love to come onto your podcast. Like I check my email much more often. If you would like to email me, like we could totally set this up for when the next book comes out. And that was just a huge like moment. I was just like,
Yeah.
dude, because I read that in the morning before work, and that kept me on a high for the rest of the day.
And I mean, like for us, like let's preface how much we love these books really quick.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
like having that response, and this might sound silly or may not work, but like think of like people like, like Mark Wahlberg or
oh
something else.
yeah,
Like I had when you told me that, like it was the same feeling as if I was meeting like an A-list celebrity, right? Like
yeah,
somebody that like I have idolized, or not really
right,
idolized, but like have just always loved and like thought about. And like these
sure.
books are like, I mean, they're just like
They're like
so,
a huge part of our
yeah,
life.
huge part of
Yeah,
our life. It's,
yeah,
pretty much what started like, at least my super, dive into the whole fantasy genre was, I mean, of course, Dresden Files,
but yeah,
uh,
that's where the snowball
yeah,
really started
yep.
rolling, right?
And so it's it's a really big deal to us, like
Yeah,
huge deal.
yeah. And then also pleasant surprise, last one, I promise, because we got to move on, is I reached out to Chris McGrath, who is the cover artist of Dresden Files, Mistborn, the Echoes saga. There's so many. There's, I think, Powder Mage Chronicles or whatever that series is called. MJ Kuhn's book, Among Thieves. He did her artwork. And oh, and King's Dark Tidings. He did the King's Dark Tidings covers. But Dresden Files alone, he did all the Dresden Files covers. And so I just randomly decided, I'm like, I'm going to shoot my shot. And I sent him an email and he's like, I'm really busy, but we can make this work. And
Cool.
so from what I understand, he is coming on the next week after July 4th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so
dude.
we got Chris McGrath to come on
That's
the podcast.
so awesome.
I am so excited. I cannot wait.
It'll be our first cover artist.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was thinking like we've had narrators on, like we've got to get like,
we're kind of encompassing all the areas of published books and whatnot, which is really cool. A little diversity never hurts anybody.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on. John Douglas, at John A. Douglas on Twitter. Have you seen better quality from indie or traditionally published fantasy novels in the time you've been a podcast?
That's a tough question. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the books that are recommended to us are from, people that we trust and have read them. Right. And so like, this book's great. Like, I'm sure you'll like it. You'll like it. And so of course, with traditional published authors, right, they're bigger, I guess, technically.
And they're not guaranteed to be good.
Yeah.
But, there's a little bit more.
There's a better chance, I guess. Because obviously, like a lot of people like these books, like, they're selling
good
out
enough
everywhere
to get published.
and whatnot. But then again, like you'll find a gem of an indie book that is just like blows you away, and you're like, this should be like big. This should be huge. This is so good. And so for me, it's kind of like just a little give and take. I've read not so great books from both sides, and I've read incredible books from both sides. So I probably couldn't say one is better than the other, I guess.
Yeah, that's very well said. You hit the nail on the head. I think that, I think that we've read a lot of indie books over the past year.
Way more than traditionally published.
Yeah, exactly. And I've certainly been very pleased with the with those books and the the quality of them. But there are a lot of indie books out there that are, I'm sorry, but there are a lot that are really terrible, just because, anyone can indie publish.
Yeah.
And so, it really depends on the books that I have enjoyed the most in indie published are the ones who have a very good editor, who have a very good cover artist,
pre-readers and all these people.
Yeah, they do a ton of work in beta reading and making sure that their story works out correctly. And of course, since we're mostly audiobook listeners, like the people that, did the due diligence of finding a good audiobook narrator,
definitely,
that is huge. Like at least 50% of what matters to us, because that's the way the story is getting conveyed to us. And so having an audiobook narrator or a good one is so important. But there's traditionally published books that had bad editors. There's trad pub books that have bad narrators. I've certainly heard of a few. There's mistakes on both sides of the aisle, and there's successes on both sides of the aisle. But I will say that, like Gabe just said, most of the books that we've read in the past year, I think, have been indie published. And we've enjoyed damn near every single one because they came so highly recommended. And for me, my number one book of last year was indie pub. It was We Men of Ash and Shadow. And so far, my number one book of this year is We Break Immortals, which is also indie pub, both of which I think would find excellent success in the traditionally published market. And so, I think that, I think that indie pub is coming a long way, as long as you as the author put in the work to find a really good editor and narrator and even a cover artist. Like a cover artist is, what gets me in the door 99% of the time. Like I hate to admit it, but I judge books by their cover all the time. Like, I feel like the cover is such a representation of what's inside. And so, it really helps to have, a good cover. And you even loved, you were telling me, I think a month or so ago, that the Voice of War and its sequels are like one of your favorite books that you've read in the past year. And that's indie pub. So, all right. Miggins at Hobbit Hole Books on Twitter says, would you rather read a Stormlight sized Twilight or a Twilight sized Stormlight? And I know you haven't read Stormlight, Gabe, but it is one of Brandon Sanderson's books. It's like a big epic fantasy.
Is it like humongous?
It is
huge.
It is freaking huge, dude. It is absolutely massive. And so would you rather read a massive sized Twilight or a Twilight sized Stormlight, do you think?
Probably for me, it'd be a Twilight sized Stormlight. And again, I don't know this, Stormlight. I don't know really what it's about or anything else, but I enjoyed Twilight. And do you remember that Twilight spinoff that we read that was from the opposite point of view from the,
that was an excellent. Yes, it like gender swapped them.
Super good. And I would totally read
a Stormlight sized version of that.
No, probably not. But yeah, Twilight sized Stormlight. If Stormlight was smaller, then it'd probably be more on my radar.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. Stormlight, I started reading it. I got about maybe 30% of the way in. And at the time we just had a lot on our schedule and I was just like, I can't do this. And so I put it down for now. I'm going to go back eventually, but for now I had to put that aside. But if it was the size of size of Twilight, I would definitely pick that back up. So we got a really interesting 3-part question. Last one from Holly Tinsley. That's at Holly Tinsley, but the E is a 3 on Twitter. And she says, which other podcasters / reviewers would you like to collaborate with? And I'm going to throw into the mix here, what authors would you like on the channel? So you start that one, Gabe.
Okay, so we're just gonna do it part by part.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that, if we could collaborate eventually, maybe with Daniel Green, I think that would be nuts.
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I'm so bummed that I missed this one, and I'm so sorry, but more of Holly and RJ for sure. We had so much fun with them. And I mean, really like Zach Argyle, I would love to see more of him and spend some more time talking to him. That'd be really cool. And yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I think Holly and RJ want to come on again for sure. Like awesome. They sent us so many messages after we recorded that were like, that was like one of the best podcasts we've ever done. Cool. Like they were so stoked with it. Awesome. So they, and of course they're great friends of ours. They will definitely be back on at another time. I would say, oh, did you answer what author or that was the author?
Holly, yep.
Okay. Any other big names you would like to see on the podcast? If we could have anybody else on the podcast, any other big names?
I mean, really not that I can. Daniel Green, that's what I'm going to stick with. Or you mean like big name, like authors?
Yeah. Authors.
Oh yeah. Well, Kel Cade for sure. Fonda Lee would be awesome to have on if we did like a reread of that. Brandon Sanderson.
Jim Butcher.
Wild. Yes. Jim Butcher, of course.
Oh my God.
I got a big list of those. Yeah. Almost every author that we've read in the last year, I'd love to see.
Yeah. I think, for me, for authors, I would say Neil Schusterman.
Oh yeah,
who did the Scythe series, dude. Yes. I reached out to him and I never got a response. Yeah. But that series is so good, dude. When we did our reread recently, not recently, but like when we first started the podcast, dude, those I forgot how good those books were. Like they like physically made me cry. Yeah. Like I have so much love and respect for that series. I would love to get Neil on here and ask him a bunch of questions. And then Brent Weeks. I would love to talk about Brent Weeks for the Night Angel trilogy. I did reach out to him. His assistant got back to me and said that he's way too busy right now because he is currently writing another Night Angel book. So, you can wish and dream, but of course, Jim Butcher, if we ever got Jim Butcher on here, I would literally shit myself with excitement. That would be incredible. Other podcasters, reviewers, something I would like to do that I think is actually possible. I think that if I get involved in his community enough, we could maybe make this happen. But I would really love to see Mike's book reviews on our channel. Yeah. He is by far my favorite booktube person. He has such a great personality, so down to earth. He just loves to talk about books, and he's just down to earth is the best way I can describe him. And he would just be so much fun in a conversation. Also the Legendarium guys. I would love to have anyone from the Legendarium on here. That would be absolutely wild. Especially Craig. Craig is my favorite, honestly. And then for our big, like when we finally get to the end of the Dresden Files, I would love to have, we had Justin on from the Dresden Files podcast. I would love to have all of those guys on for one big discussion. I think because I've watched them for years and years and years. And so I would
even went on their podcast. Like this was before. This was before we even thought, it was a twinkle in our eye, this podcast. So that was super cool.
I went onto their podcast and got to meet them. I just hit them up and I was like, I am a super fan of you guys and I'm a super fan of the Dresden Files. Like, please have me on.
Yep.
And so, and then they even mentioned us in one of their recent podcasts when Justin came on here. He told everybody on the podcast, like, oh, just want to give a shout out to Fantasy Files. I was over there doing that. And so I would love to get all those guys on the podcast. That'd be super fun. Second question from Holly. Which book character would you most want to be?
Oh, Harry Dresden.
Oh yeah, why is
Yeah,
that?
easy money. Magic, dude. It's
Okay.
by far my favorite magic system and thought out magic that I've ever read.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
But
that's not even.
he gets into trouble a lot.
He gets into trouble, but I mean, who doesn't? You know,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
doesn't? I think that that's what makes those books so good. Is he, is constantly being challenged with these things that are way bigger than he is.
Yeah.
So much more power. That you can't even. It's unfathomable that he can escape, and he always does.
Yeah.
Sometimes harm, sometimes unharmed. But yeah, I think that would be Harry Dresden. My second, I was gonna say Reskin too, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but I just love magic, and I think, yeah, being able to throw that stuff around would be just awesome.
Yeah. My number one pick is Reskin
Yeah.
for purely like the most shallow, superficial reasons you can possibly think of. He is like in the book he's described as like smoking hot, right? So
Yep.
I would love just to be like smoking hot.
Shredded. You're just,
Yeah, just
yeah.
shredded, have like a super chiseled face. And he's got, please nobody take this the wrong way, but he's got all these women just falling all over him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's just got it all really. And he's got his like downfalls to where he's super like socially kind of messed up. Like he just doesn't know how to act socially,
Yeah.
but he's also like incredibly smart. Like he can literally like, there are so many times throughout my life where I'm like, what if I just moved somewhere completely remote and like reinvented myself?
Yeah.
Like, how could I possibly do that? Reskin literally, like, his whole purpose is to do that. Like, he can take on any personality. He can become a merchant.
Yeah.
He can become a king. He can become, a whatever, like a ranger in the army.
Beggar.
He has all these skills that he can become any person, and
Yeah.
that is like a real life fantasy of mine.
Yeah.
And I know that probably says some weird shit about me, but like that's just how it is.
Yep.
And he's so talented with like bows and swords and like
Yep.
combat and like parkour and all this stuff. Like I just love, he's just a perfect character in my book, I feel. And he's so like charming too. Like, even though he is like super like socially inept, he can put on like this mask of charm and kind of get his way in whatever situation.
Yeah.
And so Reskin is definitely my number one. My number two is Errol Kingslayer from the Fallen Blade series. I was gonna pick Kyler Stern.
Yeah.
But I think Errol Kingslayer is just a lot more like grounded. He's a lot more mature, and his shadow like is a lifelong like partner of his, and like can talk to him, and they help each other, and they have like this beautiful, wonderful friendship between the two of them. And so I would just love to have all of Errol's abilities. He's a master assassin and thief, but he's also got like this lifelong companion who will always be with him. And so I really love the idea of that. So Holly's last question is
This is so Holly, dude. I love it.
I know. Out of the three of us, out of you, me, and Chris, who would win in a battle royale? So Gabe, what are we talking about? Do we have weapons here? Do we have guns? Do we start on opposite sides of the map? What are we doing?
I'm gonna say let's lay this out. So we're gonna go with Modern Warfare format, okay?
Okay.
So, but singles, right? We're by ourselves. Right. And so three of us dropping a huge map, all at different ends. There's loot that we can take and build up whatever.
Okay.
And, we get closer and closer. So there's the setting.
Okay.
Why don't you go first and then I'll go?
Okay, man. So what happens first? We get dropped down. What am I doing? Let me think. we get dropped. I'm immediately looking for shelter, I think.
Yeah.
I'm immediately looking for shelter somewhere to hide out for a bit, to let you and Chris kill each other off. I'm looking for a sniper rifle, but also something short range in case we get into that kind of combat. what do you, okay, so we'll take it step by step. What are you doing when you first drop down?
So when I first drop in, immediately,
this is so great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. First hut or house or whatever, I'm just gonna scramble, go through as many as I can and build up my arsenal. That's my goal. I want to find, a mid-range assault rifle is kind of my dig.
Yeah.
A good scope, preferably like thermal scope would be nice. Stuff like that. Get some grenades and armor. And I'm just gonna run around like a chicken without a head until I'm built up.
Very cool. Very cool. Let me try something real quick. I have an idea.
Chris.
Yeah. I have an idea. It's ringing now.
Okay. He's not gonna answer.
I hope he does. Please answer.
He's probably playing Alf or whatever that is, Valheim.
Oh yeah.
You reached Krystle.
Fuck. Okay, so Chris didn't answer. Sorry. What do we think he's doing? I think that Chris, just knowing him for so long, he's really good at like Call of Duty and those kind of games.
I believe that.
And he was like really, really good at Halo. I think that he's always been into sniper rifles as well, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And so I think that he is like, I think he's the one that wins, honestly. I think that he's getting like the camouflage and he's getting the long range rifle.
I would probably tend to agree, but I feel like there's a chance that
you could win,
that I could pull out a hat trick, and the way that I would do that would be to find a vehicle, a quick one.
Oh yeah.
And I would kind of zoom around. It's really hard to hit a moving target. Not that he can't, because if he did, it'd be game over. But I think that if we were to like walk into the same building at the same time, his reaction speed and aiming would probably outclass mine, just because I don't play a lot of that. So yeah, hard to say. I think that overall we could probably give it to him because he probably most likely would. But I just gotta, hold a little hope that we could come in and win.
If it got down to you or me, I think you would win, because I just would have no idea. Do you have any background in like hunting or shooting or anything?
No, but not really. My whole life, I just played the shit, ever from Modern Warfare 2. I played Modern Warfare 2. I probably have 1,000, 2,000 hours in that game.
That's true.
And so like when I playing for a while, Warzone's a whole different breed of cat, because you have the one life and you're, it's kind of, you get smaller, but like team deathmatch wise, like as long as I'm playing like constantly, I'm pretty good. Not like the best, but pretty good.
Sure.
But like Rusty, like if we were to drop in right now and play, it would not go very well.
I know. All right. Well, I hope that answers that, Holly. I think real quick, what do you think if we were all just dropped into an arena with like melee weapons?
Oh, I don't know. I would lose for sure. Like if it was really me, yeah, dude, the whole hand-on-hand thing, like I don't know if I could do it.
I know
I'm not much of a fighter. I definitely could take aim from a window and shoot at somebody, but like hand to hand, I'm scared shitless of stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't even know how Chris would do. I think that I would probably lose for sure, just because like I have like an okay build for the kind of work I do, but I'm not like big in any way. And Chris is pretty ripped. The last time I saw him in like a tank top or something, I was like, oh, you definitely work out like all the time, like and so I think he would still win in a melee combat, unless we both like ganged up on him and then had to fight it out ourselves or something. So I don't know. That is a very, very grim, dark question, Holly. Thank you for pitting all of us against each other. That is fantastic. If I can. Okay, cool. Okay, so you kind of missed it, but we're on the podcast right now, Chris, and we got a question from Twitter. Between the three of us, who would win in a battle royale situation if we all got dropped into a Modern Warfare Warzone map? Who would win?
Like life or in Xbox Call of Duty?
No,
In what?
in like life.
Real
In
life,
life.
like a real life battle royale, or like
Oh.
in actual Warzone?
Gabe says in real life.
Well, I mean, for sure, me.
Yeah.
That's what we
That's
said.
what we
That's
said.
what we said. Oh, that's exactly what we said.
Really?
Yeah. We had the whole thing, dude. We had the whole thing going like step by step, and I was like, okay, so like I would drop down and immediately find shelter and wait for Gabe and Chris to kill each other. And then I would just take whoever's left. I would try to find a sniper rifle and try to just snipe whoever remained.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
But
That's pretty funny.
the one thing we didn't know though is what would be your initial strategy after getting dropped onto the map? Like, what's the first thing you do?
Just like in the video game, find a weapon, man.
Yep. Find a good
But,
one.
like-
Find a weapon.
But like, are you going mid range, or are you sneaking around with a sniper rifle, or what?
I am going with the jack of all trades.
Yep.
15 carbine.
This is why he's gonna win. This is
Yeah.
exactly why he's gonna
Gabe-
win.
Rifle type
Gabe
thing.
Gabe says this is why he's gonna win.
4A1.
That's so awesome.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And then
That's hilarious.
and then we brought up the situation: who would win in like a gladiator arena pit?
Oh god.
Probably still you.
Probably still me.
Oh god, dude. I love the
You
confidence.
guys are agreeing with this. It's funny. Usually everyone's like, no, I would win. I would win.
No, I would not. There's no way.
That would not be fun, though. I would not be chill with
Yeah.
Yeah, Gabe.
gladiator sword fight. Yeah.
Yeah, Gabe and I agreed that like Gabe
We're
would
vaginas, dude.
what's
mean,
that, Gabe?
We're vaginas.
Oh, Gabe says
least
we're
I am.
vaginas.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
fight nobody.
So I know that I would be the first to die. Like I just know that. Okay. So I think it would be up to you and Gabe. And yeah, one of you would come out on top. But I think in both situations, Gabe and I were like, yeah, Chris would probably win. Like he's played more sports than us. He's in better shape than us. Like it's just how that works. So
Oh, that's funny. I don't
yeah.
know. Maybe Gabe is scrappy. He pulls some shit. You know?
Yeah, maybe. He's shaking his head. All right. Well, yeah, we just wanted to get you on record because we had to like fill in the blanks for you because we didn't know. But yeah, it all lines
I
up.
appreciate that. Yeah. The link to this episode when it's done, I'll have to go back and watch that sequence. 'Cause
Yeah.
It was
hilarious.
the question was given to us by the author of We Men of Ash and Shadow, Holly Tinsley. And
what?
yeah.
Damn, that's dark. Wow.
I know. And so I'm like, thanks for the like grim dark question on this lighthearted episode, Holly. Like
So funny.
all right, man. Well, thanks for calling me back. We'll have to get you on an episode pretty soon here.
All right. Good luck.
All right.
Yep.
All right, bye.
All right,
That
dude,
was fucking hilarious.
that was awesome.
Okay, so I am just gonna share my screen real quick. This will take like 5 minutes. And we're just gonna look at some of our progression through the past year, because I think that this will be a really fun thing to do. I do want to play a little bit of a clip just from the first episode, just
Oh god, dude.
because I think it'll be
Oh
fun.
Lord. Okay.
All right.
right.
Okay, so here is our catalog. I'll get my mouse ready to do this thing. So I want to say, so if we look at like when we did our first Dresden Files thing, we didn't even have like a podcast frame. Like we didn't even have like
Oh yeah, no, there
the-
was
the
there was
thing
nothing
around it.
then. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was really this Lies of Loch Lamora that Chris and I did, where I came up with like this weird frame that I had. I don't know why I ever did it that way. like with the leather, like it was cool in theory, but
Yeah.
it didn't look modern or like podcasty enough. I don't know exactly why I did that, but when did I update it to be what we have now? Let me see. Nope. I think Jarryd might have been the last time I used it. I think it was King's Dark Tidings with
Yeah.
Chris, where I updated our podcast frame. And so it's kind of interesting to see, like, we had this trailer that I put together. Oh, it's not going to autoplay. But I had this trailer that I put together, but it didn't really explain like what our podcast was. It was kind of just a bunch of clips.
Cool animation.
Yeah. And it had like clips of various things we said. It is hilarious. If you are a subscriber who has just joined us recently, go back and watch this trailer, because I took like the funniest, most out of context clips from the podcast and just compiled it all into one like ongoing thing, and it is so funny. Yeah, you definitely go check that out.
It is super funny.
So let's look at this for a minute.
Oh God.
So we had no intro. We had absolutely no intro.
Oh, me and my freaking so funny, dude.
And like I'm like way out of focus because I'm just using the computer camera.
A shitty one at that.
Yeah. And I had my Yeti mic, but even that Yeti mic just wasn't that great. Like, so yeah. Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy/fiction books and media. Oh, it's so terrible.
Spencer. Oh gosh, dude.
With me is Quoth himself.
I'm just so glad you cannot see my face.
Co-host Gabriel. And today we'll be starting our first episode with a bang, talking about Chronicles. Oh my God, that's about all I can.
That's so cringy, dude. That's why I would never go back and watch that.
Oh my God.
Say, hey, it's not going to come out this year.
Oh, wait, was that?
Year, it's going to come out next year. Like, even that would be a positive note.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's our roots. That's where we started. Yep. And now it is this. We both have, I think
modicum more
modicum of like, definitely more confidence, but also better equipment. Like I have a way better mic and webcam now. And
we figured out, I think the biggest thing is just our format, not just notes, but just the whole entire video format. Because now we can, now we have a template that we use every time, hence the notes that he showed you. But just knowing the way that things are going to play out, you can think ahead versus the first one where it's just like no notes and Spencer asks a question. And it's, okay, I'll try and answer it. And then we talk about like grass or some shit for 20 minutes.
Exactly. So then from there, we went on to this episode 2. And this is equally as bad because I didn't even think about, like, we were talking about our favorite characters, and we had all these different characters from different series. And we basically just went like full spoilers and talked about them all. But the probability of a viewer having read all of those books,
it's not very high.
It's not very high. And so I don't know what I was thinking with that idea. But then we really started to not really started to pick up steam, but we definitely started to pick up a little bit more steam when we did this Mistborn era 1 with Chris. And that's
where we had some really solid conversation and really solid flow.
Definitely. Like we started to, I think that's the first one where we had like an actual set of notes that were somewhat organized.
Yep.
And we just had a lot of really great conversation. Chris was still getting used to the camera himself, but he did really well. And that was a pretty good episode. It's not a bad one. And then we did our first Dresden Files episode.
Ooh,
and I remember this being okay, but we talked about all 3 books.
Yeah.
In the first one.
And that's when we're like, no, we can't. We got to just do one by one.
Yeah. And I think like, man, that was just like, like we were
Oh,
so
I
wiped
guess,
out.
yeah, we did the
Well,
Scythe after that. And that's when you split them up because the Dresden Files
yeah,
is, well, I guess they're still just about as long. Where was the, oh yeah, so 3 hours and 22 minutes on that one there. And so like
yeah,
that's when, because that was truly like 4.5 hours, right? Edited
right.
down
Yeah.
to
Then I edited it
three and a
down.
half
Yeah.
hours. And man, that was like running a marathon, dude.
Right. Right.
Tough.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And then I think like this, what will we read next? That was one of the first videos. Obviously it only has 64 views as we can see now. But that actually got a lot of people on Twitter talking. And so when we posted that, that was the first video that we had where we really actually had like some genuine interaction.
Yeah.
And people like, oh, I really like that book, you should read this one or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where things started to kind of like, not take off, but started to get better.
Yeah.
And then we started doing these, even this Dresden Files episode was like 4 and 5, but I think this was the last one. I think it was Scythe, where we were like, okay, we can't do that again. And then I was like, well, we just read 4 and 5. Should we just bust that out and then go single from there?
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so then every book from there on out is single, except for our big, like, we've had big, like full series discussions, like with Jim from Fantasy for the Ages and Chris, but that wasn't going like book by book specifically. That was just talking like in general of the series. And so then this is where I started to do these spoiler-free book reviews. I did King's Dark Tidings, like why you should read it. That got a ton of interaction. It's still one of our most, not one of our most viewed videos, but it's on the higher end of it with 220. And it has a ton of comments on it, like people saying, oh, I love these books and stuff. And then I just kind of did that for a while. I did Hand of the Sun King. I did Why You Need to Read We Men of Ash and Shadow, which got us introduced to like Holly Tinsley and all that stuff. And then I went on a rant. I went on a rant after reading The Pariah. And I really, really did not like this book. And so I was very considerate, and I wasn't like,
a dick.
yeah, I wasn't like a total dick, but I was like, I was definitely like, I did not like this book, and here's why. And it is one of our most viewed videos at 726 views.
Dude, people love that, man. When you, if you can, you're willing to be honest, because like you worry about, like, at least I do, like hurting feelings of somebody, especially now that we're connected, these, because the author might see that or whatever else. But it's like ultimately, like, that really doesn't matter, right? It's just, you gave an honest opinion. That's what people love, right? They enjoy that stuff, because then they know, like, oh, well, here's why he didn't like it, and I wouldn't like that either,
Right. Yeah, I think people kind of like, I think that's where I started kind of I am kind of cynical as a person in general, but I kind of came up with like this personality, this internet personality of being cynical. Even in our Twitter bio, I'm like, we're a little cynical, but it's part of our charm.
Yep.
And, I think that really kind of explains what we do pretty well. Like we're not afraid to say the things that should be said. You know what I mean? So like, regardless if we love the author or whatever, like we're still going to we're not going to be afraid to talk about the things that we didn't like. Even on my review for Holly's most recent book, I was telling the viewers, I'm like, it really hurts me to say anything bad about this book, because she's a good friend of ours, and I really did enjoy this book, but there are a couple things that didn't work for me, and I was honest about that. And I feel like people really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. And that it's everybody's got a preference, right? Like no two people will think the same about it, and so that's why that works so well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
then we had Justin from the Dresden Files podcast on. That was phenomenal, getting someone who literally does this like not for a living, but like his podcast is only about Dresden Files. And so to get someone so completely experienced in on that is awesome. And then of course, here's the Holly and RJ videos. We had a ton of fun with them. That was really where we were like, okay, we need to do more author interviews. And then we had Chris on to go back to the Name of the Wind, because our first episode was not the best. And so we were like, what if we reread Name of the Wind? And then Chris got super into it. It's now one of his favorite fantasy books of all time. And so that was awesome. And then here's where I started doing these Dexter or the Fantasy Files reacts. And I started with the new Dexter show because Dexter is like one of my favorite shows of all time. And so I was like, what if I did something completely outside book related, like outside of the book sphere? And so I just started reviewing these Dexter episodes every time they would, post every week. And I just went through and had a great time. And then I think Chris joined me for the last one. And then of course we did all the Jade City, Jade Legacy, all that stuff. That was a ton of fun. More Dresden Files. We did some giveaways that haven't quite panned out that well. People always kind of come through in the end, but it takes a while for people to be like, oh, I'll get into the giveaway. We have another one coming up, by the way, or maybe it's already posted by the time this posts, for the sequel to We Men of Ash and Shadow, Holly's new book. We have a giveaway for that. And then we did our Illumicrate unboxing, dude. This was so much fun.
That was cool.
You came over and we just sat on this table. We sat below this table and set the green screen up behind us. We had a secondary camera, your phone that was filming from above. And we just opened all this stuff. And that was a ton of fun. I really look forward to doing another unboxing someday.
That was cool.
And then here's the first time Jim from Fantasy for the Ages was on the show. That was a ton of fun. And then we kind of get into all the recent stuff. It's all kind of the same stuff. You can tell that we really got into a format of doing spoiler-free topic-based stuff and then going, into book stuff. I did this thing that I thought would catch on, but it didn't really. It's the Fantasy Files clips. I would like to do more of them if we have funny things that happen in our podcast. Maybe I'll even clip out the section about Holly's question about the three of us fighting. But this is just this is during our video of the land, our episode on the land. And we talked about why my mom wouldn't let me watch Pokemon. It was, dude, that was probably one of the hardest I've laughed on a podcast. So that was great. There's our new trailer right there. And and then we kind of get into the most recent stuff, and it's been an absolute blast. Had David Dalglish on, did a big Red Rising review, did a big review for We Break Immortals, and that's kind of it, guys. That's kind of our journey there, right? So any final thoughts on the past year, or what you're looking forward to, or anything like that?
I mean, no specific things. I'm really excited to see not the amount, but how we continue to kind of move forward and grow. I think that's probably my favorite part of this whole thing. Besides maybe meeting people and getting to do it, is see us kind of form what our strengths and weaknesses are, and then learning how to cope with the weaknesses, and how to kind of think on our strengths and see how we can change. So I think that you and I both have really gotten good at that, and I'm excited, man. I'm really excited.
And I feel like we've gotten better about communicating on that too. We'll call each other and get a game plan for podcasts and stuff. And
definitely
that really helps.
And now one thing that we'll set up eventually is the shared calendar thing.
Oh yes. I think
that. Google Calendar, you can make one with the Fantasy Files podcast email, and then the calendar, and we can both be logged. But I think that'll help too, because then we can look and make sure, because there's been plenty of times where I very forgetful, have forgot that there's something going on
Sure.
on Wednesday instead of Thursday or whatever else, and make plans or whatever. So that'll be helpful.
Yeah. That'll be great. All right, guys, before we wrap it up here, I want to give a huge thank you to the people who have supported us and interacted with us over the past year and just made this whole experience so amazing. I feel like we found really genuine friends in the fantasy community and just have really enjoyed collaborating with other content creators. And you guys honestly make this experience so incredibly magical. And while Gabe and I do this mostly for us, admittedly, so that we can have a specific time and place to talk about the books that we've been reading, you guys have really added this extra element that I don't think we were expecting to the podcast, where
definitely,
as we're coming up with ideas and fun skits in the review videos and whatnot, we now have the audience in mind as we go through that process, thinking about what you guys will enjoy as well as what we will enjoy, because you guys are certainly part of the equation now. And the podcast has kind of become a living, breathing thing, all thanks to you guys. A big thank you to everyone who watches our videos. And even if you don't subscribe or follow, we genuinely feel the love every time we see those views go up one at a time. It's nice for us to see, like, oh, somebody took the time to click on this video and watch us talk for an hour or two. And that's just huge for us. Always feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or email. We're here because we love talking about fantasy, sci-fi, video games, movies, or TV shows. And we'd love to talk with you guys about those things. A big thank you to everyone who has helped me with editing advice and general podcast advice and inspiration. You guys have come in at critical times in the podcast life so far, and you've really helped in many, many ways. Thank you to all the authors who have really blessed us with their time and conversation. Thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking with us over on Twitter. It has completely blown our minds getting to talk to the wonderful people who create these books that we love so much. Your books stay with us in our hearts and minds long after we finish them. And having you guys on the podcast is honestly one of the most wonderful things that we've gotten to experience in the last year. I probably won't be able to get to everyone, but I want to give some specific shout outs to those who have helped us along the way, influenced us, joined us for the podcast, and those who have genuinely become wonderful friends of ours. So a big thank you to Friends Talking Fantasy and the Legendarium for being the podcast that all of this kind of stemmed from. You guys have been a huge influence on us and shown us what it means to create a fun and lighthearted podcast. Shout outs and thank yous to all the authors who have joined us on the podcast. Jarryd Smith, who was our first official guest, besides Chris, and our first author interview, like we mentioned. And Holly Tinsley and RJ Bailey, who have become really great friends of ours. Thomas Howard Riley, Ryan Cahill, Krystle Matar, MJ Kuhn, Peter Hartog, Zach Argyle, Jeff Spate, AJ Recker, JT Greathouse, and of course, the most recent David Dalglish. You are all awesome, and we really look forward to having you on again. Another big thank you to all of the fellow content creators that have joined us. Jim from Fantasy for the Ages, Julian from Between the Lines, Sarah and Lily from Fiction Fans Podcast, Justin from the Dresden Files Podcast, Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi, and last but never least, Sam from the Shelf-ish with Sam blog, who joined us for Night Angel. That was a ton of fun. I don't think we even really talked about Night Angel, but that was one of the high points of this whole podcast. So yeah, and of course, A genuine and giant thank you to you, Gabe. Sincerely, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This whole thing would not have been the same if it was just me doing, book reviews and stuff just by myself.
Yep.
You have absolutely made this podcast something that I look forward to every single week. It's given us such a great way to stay in contact, even though we live kind of far apart. And it's just given us an opportunity to grow closer than I think we ever would have before. So
I totally agree.
Man, thank you for joining me on this. It has been sincerely wonderful doing this with you.
I am right there with you. Same goes to you.
And that is about it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for our first year as a podcast. We hope that there are many more to come. We love doing this, so as long as that doesn't change, we'll keep putting out these videos and podcasts. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below and hit the bell icon on your way out, and follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy to keep up with what we're doing next. Until next time, keep reading the books you love and keep sharing them with those who enjoy them. We'll see you in many more videos to come, whatever they may be.